you.
So the last panel is entitled Finding the South African Funny Bone. And Zukiswa assures me that they're going to be funnier than the previous panel. So she's got a lot to live up to now, and because I think everyone was having a good time there in that last one. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Zukiswa Wanner, Sarah Britten, and Ndumiso Ngcobo. Thanks, guys. Give them a round of applause.
It's all fun and games when you're sitting in the audience.
Yeah. Hi.
Until you have to get here. I actually had to go through, like I was just looking, I was like, no man, there's a title missing here that I didn't see. One from one of the two authors. Zukiswa is very adamant that until you've actually written 3 published works, you're not an author. So I'm a writer talking to 2 authors. Before I say anything else, please give a round of applause for the authors, not the writer. All right, finding the South African funny bone. My goodness, South Africa. I do not know anything about South Africa because I only know my little bit of South Africa, because that's the thing about South Africa. I almost feel like I'm also talking to people who are sitting right there. I've never quite understood that. It's like, there's so much space down here, but I'm not a Hitler, so I will not insist that you guys come here, because I feel like I have to speak. We've just come from a session where you had a discussion about something as profound as what was it? Was it the rising or the emerging? What was it?
It was rising. There was a lot of rising.
African women rising.
It was just yeast. Yes.
Yeah.
Baking and
up.
stuff.
Yeah.
It was about baking.
Yeah, baking. Yeah, no. Had I been the one chairing that, I would have had my hands over here, just to avoid any rising and emerging. But the thing about it is, we are talking about what is essentially a very, very, very. I think it's quite a serious subject. And I was sitting here and I was just, bragging to the 2 writers about the fact that.
Authors.
Oh,
Authors,
sorry.
Yeah.
This writer was talking about the works, and I was just marveling at the fact that I have read every single title here plus one, because what has happened here is that there is one title missing, and that title is behind, rather. No, I've always wanted to call it beyond, but behind every successful man. This is Zukiswa Wanner. And she has written the titles on your
Left.
your right. Yeah, no. On the audience's right. Of course, it's madams. It's behind every successful man, which is not here. And there's Men of the South, and there is also Made in SA. And then, of course, there is Sarah Britten, who is sitting right next to me. Who has written South African insults, more insult, and yet more insults.
Yeah, I could write insults until the cows, the Nkandla cows
She's
come home,
the insult expert. But the thing about it is that at some point we actually do need to talk about this, about what all of us find funny, and why it is that we think it's funny, because at some point all of us have opened a newspaper, and either we have been met with a Zapiro cartoon. And Zapiro cartoons, all of us, I think, we are in agreement. You go from, this is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life, to what was he thinking? Because I think that the scope of what it is that you and I find funny is always determined. And this is a universal phenomenon. Somehow South Africans think that this is unique. Somehow we think that in South Africa, this is a unique thing, that what do we find funny about where we are? Meanwhile, quite frankly, wherever it is that you go, people find things funny that are not funny to others, and I find things funny that are not. And just for the sake of what some people who are sitting here go, who's Ndumiso Ngcobo and why it is, I have written some hallucinations. I entitled them, one of them, Some of My Best Friends Are White, and the other one is It Because I'm Black, and I write a column in the Sunday Times. Some people think I'm funny. Some people think I'm the most retarded person that they've ever read, and they will never read it again. The question that I need to ask you as an opener before, because she's got a book, and she's going to do a bit of a reading, just not now. And Sarah has decided, no, she's not going to be reading anything. I've met both of you, and I remember very clearly when it is I met you. And
I don't.
You don't?
Ow!
No, I'm sure I was drunk at the time.
Is it because I'm black? I've merged. No, but that's precisely the point, and we're coming there. Is that the thing that struck me about both of you is that you are actually really funny people, and if I have anointed you funny, trust me, you're funny. 'Cause
Okay.
what do you find funny? Like, really, I know it's a very broad question, and I'm opening it up so that whatever it is that you've prepared before I ask you the question, you can talk about. But what do you find funny, Sarah?
At its most basic, what's funny is the gap between what is intended and what actually happens. And I find people who are pompous very funny.
Like me. No, sorry.
You're not pompous at all. You're self-aware. I think people who are self-aware, you're a pompous self-aware guy. You're a self-aware pompous guy, which makes you funny because, so there are different types of humor, and one type is somebody who's completely unaware that they're incredibly funny. And I'm sure you all meet those people every day, and they take themselves incredibly seriously, and they sit there, and then you see tunnies all the time, and you think, God, they're funny. But they don't know they're funny, whereas you know you're funny. And I think people who don't know they're funny can't be funny for a living. And I guess I'm so painfully self-aware. I'm this painfully guilt-ridden, white, limp-wristed liberal. I can't go for a walk in the suburb where I live with my parents because I'm starting a business, and I parasitize my elders because I want to save money. I can't walk down those expensive suburban streets without wanting to write an essay on hegemony and gender stereotypes and privilege. And I think because I'm so aware of my position and my class position and all of that, and I'm aware that it's so random and contingent, and in any other set of circumstances, I could be there and you could be here, I think that's kind of funny. At its base, what I love about humor is that it allows us to play with identity. And I think that's also why a lot of people feel incredibly threatened by humor, feel threatened by superhero, feel threatened by comedians, because if you're not allowed to joke about things, if you're not allowed to imagine yourself in a different position, if you can't mock the things that others hold dear, then there's no questioning of the way things are. And my God, if we question the way things are, what might happen? So at its very basis, I think humor is about questioning, and it's about playing with where we are in life. And if you're not prepared to play, you can't ever find anything funny.
Mm. You know, I haven't talked to Zukiswa about this because she decided in the introduction to her book to invoke my name, which I have a very fundamental problem because I did not want to be associated with Made in South Africa in any way. But Zukiswa.
Am I allowed to say something about your mother? At this point?
His mother was lovely. No.
What do you find funny other than my mother?
You?
Yeah.
Well, I just think life is not that serious, to be honest. We need to take ourselves a little bit lighter and stuff and everything. Gosh, actually, our president is very funny. Yeah, our politicians are very funny. In fact, I'm actually with Trevor Noah when he says that politicians are taking the jobs of comedians.
Yeah.
They are.
And that's all we have to say about
Yeah,
that.
that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, Steve Urkel. All right. So now speaking about what is funny, right? What is not funny? What are we not what are we not allowed to make fun of? So, for instance, I have someone who is a friend of mine who is. What is the politically correct word? Differently abled. And he has a
What,
fundamental...
he's an accountant.
Hey?
Is he an accountant?
But he has... No, but seriously, okay, the technical term is he's a paraplegic. He's got a fundamental problem with people saying that you cannot make fun of people who are paraplegic, quadriplegic, whatever the terms are. Who can we not make fun of?
Can I jump in there with a real example, which
Yeah.
blew up on Twitter last year?
Yeah.
Sometime, a writer from Botswana called Sianda Panda, she's very young, she's very controversial, she's
Sianda Right.
very,
Sianda
very
writes,
funny.
she's hilarious.
And she started a hashtag called White Genocide in response to the red balloons thing started by Dan Ritt and Steve. Steve's the same guy who called me a laxative. And she started this hashtag White Genocide because she wanted to mock the notion that there's this planned white genocide. And I saw this appearing in my timeline, and I decided to join in. And I later explained why I decided to take that hashtag and use it. For me, there is a very important distinction between mocking stupid ideas, and I actually spoke about this at the beginning of this week. I think it's very important to mock stupid ideas, because if you don't mock stupid ideas, they persist, and it becomes okay to espouse them in public. And one of the ways we stop stupid ideas from multiplying is to make fun of them, to make it embarrassing, to own up to the fact that you might share them. So I think it's very important to mock stupid ideas. What I don't like mocking is actual human pain. So I wrote very clearly about why I felt white genocide was worthy of mockery, but I would never mock a murder victim or somebody who lost a child or somebody who experienced something really horrible in their lives. And I think South Africans, as a rule, and this applies globally actually, people have a very hard time making a distinction between the mockery of an idea and the mockery of human pain. I don't think it's okay to mock human pain necessarily. And it, again, incredibly fine line. Your friend...
As in if I walk into a glass door and I didn't realize there was a glass door, there's human pain, but it's funny.
It's
Right.
funny human. It's if you stub your toe, it's like, and
Yeah.
we need a taxonomy of human pain, like from the toe stubbing on the one hand to
Yeah.
real incredible anguish and loss on
Yeah.
the other. And
Big
and,
difference, yeah.
And of course, in the concentration camps during the Holocaust, one of the ways that people used to survive was humor. It's a very important survival tool. But there, it's people who themselves are going through pain who are using humor to deal with it. So from an outsider's perspective, as an outsider, it's not my place to mock somebody who lost a relative to farm murder, for example, because this was about notions of white genocide. But the idea of a white genocide was deserved to be satirized. It deserved to be mocked. And this brings up another rather strange aspect of humor, is that some of the things we mock are not necessarily funny. There's an undercurrent of anger that goes on there. It's the sort of the Swiftian response to an untenable situation. Sometimes we need to mock things because it's a better way to deal with
it.
incredible anger than just being angry.
Zooks?
Well, on the other hand, if you are over the age of 5 and you are walking and you stumble and you fall, and I ask you whether you're okay, and you say you're okay, I think I'm allowed to laugh. Because that's incredibly funny, seriously. Anybody over the age of 5 stumbling and falling is funny.
But is there anything that we are not allowed to make fun of?
And white people, you can't say kefa. That's not a funny joke. Yeah, that's not funny.
But is there anything, I ask for the third time, that we are not allowed to laugh at?
Yes, I've just said white people can't laugh at kefa. It's not a funny joke.
And that's it?
Okay, we
Well,
can't say
yeah.
it.
You can't say it. You can't say it as a
But
joke.
what if
It's not
somebody said
funny.
it accidentally without knowing what they were saying?
How do you say it accidentally without knowing what you're
Yeah,
saying?
what if you're
Like,
a foreigner?
seriously, come
What
on,
if you're
come
a
on, come on,
foreigner
come on.
and you get
I slipped
tricked?
on a banana peel, and then I fell, and then I said kefa.
But
Accidentally.
But this actually brings up a really good point
No, it is,
about
yeah.
context.
Yeah.
Because who does the laughing is as important as what is laughed
What the
at.
joke
I
is
mean, if-
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Now, you see, the thing about also about what is funny to me, and by the way, as I'm speaking and I kind of am scanning through the audience, I can tell who's uncomfortable and who's not uncomfortable about, for instance, the use of the word kefa. And for me, it's like I grew up in a house where my grandmother, was colored, so she had a white side and a black side, and so she could never decide which side she was, which is why I always find everything funny. And so she used the word very liberally all the time, around the house. And the thing about it is this, stories. Now, I'm going to be asking you, Sarah, I'm going to share a story, and it's about
I'm
you.
scared.
No, it is about you. And no, the story is about you. Like, really, you are the protagonist in the story. And I'm going to be asking, not you first, I'll ask Zooks first, whether she thinks the story is funny. A couple of years ago, very quickly,
2010.
2010, a bunch of writers decided it's a great idea. We're going to go all over us. We're going to go out to the Eastern Cape. We're going to be spreading the word about reading and so on. And
Well,
and
not
so
quite all of us, but
Well, And so
the
what
people we like to drink with.
Yeah, the people.
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of writers. And so what happens is we decide rock and roll has got icons. And the only reason that they're icons is that they're all dead. There's John Lennon, there's Jimi Hendrix, there is, give me the names, rock and roll. And then
all those
we
dead
said
people.
hip hop.
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, Kurt Cobain, and
Yeah.
we say, okay, what we have, in hip hop, we've got Tupac, we've got Biggie, all of these people, and they are dead. And the question was, who are the dead South African writers? And so we decide that one of us needs to die. And when we were having this conversation, the only writer who wasn't there was Sarah, because she decided to go in.
Yeah, because
go
I'm a
to bed.
nerd and I wasn't
So he's like,
drinking.
no, we're going to kill Sarah. And so, no, we didn't decide we were going to kill Sarah. We couldn't decide
couldn't
who it
decide
was.
who we were killing.
Who it was. The following morning, one of our writers, author of A Man Who's Not a Man, Hear Me Alone, and lately...
Unimportant.
Yes,
Thandwa
unimportant,
Mqolozana.
coming out, decides who it is that he wants to kill. So what he does is he writes all of us a note. So when we wake up in the morning, we wake up underneath the doors is a
Piece of
little
paper.
handwritten piece. And the handwritten piece is, Sarah Britten is dead. Because we had decided to kill you. Is that funny?
Well, I literally found out about the story tonight. For how many years now? 3 years?
3 years.
Well,
3
Yeah.
years.
This is the fourth
4.
year.
Yeah, we're going into the fourth
Is that
year.
funny?
It actually is.
Is death funny?
I think
Joking
what
about
might have,
death is,
I
I
think
think
what
you
might
should
have
joke
made it
about death.
funnier
Yeah.
from not being Sarah Britten, obviously. What made it funny for me is that everybody came out, and what we did was early in the morning, and we sat outside at Rhodes. We're staying in some hostel in Rhodes.
Yeah.
And we all sat outside and we were watching Sarah Britten's store so that we could actually see, is Sarah Britten really dead? And when she came out, it was like, okay, wow, we can't even sell this to the Daily Sun or anything.
I'm sorry,
You know?
guys, I'm so sorry.
Now, politics. In South Africa, we have a situation where everybody thinks that it is okay to mock politicians. It is okay to mock the ANC. It is okay. I mean, if you look at humor in South African writing, it is okay to mock all of those things, right? Is government, the president, the ruling party, are they still fair game, or have they now moved on to that section of what you call humor that maybe is not so funny anymore? Zooks?
Well, I think you shouldn't make fun of a presidential penis unless you've measured it.
Have you?
And but I think the governing party, I like to call them the governing party because I don't think we have rulers. You know, I always think of rulers as chiefs and kings and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the governing party and all the opposition, man, I mean, you know, I couldn't stop laughing at Mampela Rampela's like kiss with, you know, I thought that was hilarious. I don't know who didn't think that was funny, you know? So those are things, man, and Julius is the gift that keeps on giving. You know? So
Are Julius' jokes still funny?
I think Julius' jokes will always be funny until maybe like Julius becomes like Sarah Britten and he's dead. You know?
Okay, this just got weird.
Right. Is Julius still funny?
I have mixed feelings about Julius. And it's not just because he retweeted me the other day, and I've got a whole lot of EFF followers, and I fear they may be disappointed by all my white middle-class tweets. But nonetheless, I guess it's about context, and I'm super aware amongst white South Africa and people who live in fourways and drive GTRs and they hang around the bra and it's all Tuscan, and like, hey, how's that Julius Malema, huh? And you know the type, and it's like, oh, another Julius joke.
No, but is it possible that you have issues with saying negative things about Julius because, you know, you and Steve Hofmeyer have been having like a tiff, and so you're on Julius' side now.
No,
is
it's not about that at all. I think humor, it's like wearing Edgar's fashion from a sale in 2009, and it's just lame now. And it's the thing with, you know, jokes have a sell-by date. They really do. And Julius jokes are kind of, unless Julius does something interesting, Julius jokes are kind of boring. Whereas new politicians coming up,
Edgar's
it's
is
more
lame,
interesting.
how about my Mr. Price shit?
No, Mr. Price
I'm
is
just
actually
wondering.
quite cool. It's shabby chic. Yeah, we're getting dragged off, and I think humor, it's like Zoomer jokes became so done. It's so overdone. And when I see jokes about Jay-Z and jokes about Julius now, I think, use your imagination. Can we not find a different angle on that? So I guess I'm almost a bit of a joke snob in that I want to see new stuff. I want to see interesting stuff. One of the things that we see with social media now is the rise of the meme. And it's very interesting the way social media in particular responds to whatever it is we're seeing out there. So the great provider of memes right now is the Oscar trial, of course, and Barry Roo, he's become almost this cultural icon. Every time something new happens, like I'm sure you remember when there was that fight. I think it was, I forget which SABC channel it was, and some guy touched some other guy on his studio.
It was E-News, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, social media just grabbed that and absolutely ran with it. And that's where things are genuinely funny
Sorry,
and
wait,
interesting.
rewind. Somebody touched somebody on somebody's studio, and social media grabbed it.
And ran with it.
Okay.
No, yeah, well, you talked about penis measuring, so, yeah, just kidding.
So,
But
so now, Sarah, you know, for instance, there's this old story about how it is that there was, you know, the bard who, and that's like a court jester and so on. And so, you know, every single time that he told a joke, then boils would grow. And I think you touched on it, where it's like you make fun of something until whoever it is then realizes that whatever it is that they're doing is completely absurd, right? And nobody, you stop doing it, and so on. What do you think the Julius jokes have achieved? It is now, today is the 22nd of March. I'm not asking you to make predictions about who you think is going to be the biggest winner in the next elections. What have the Julius jokes achieved?
Joking about something is often a way to say,
Yeah.
hey, this is worth paying attention to. It's actually worth acknowledging. And I guess it's a little bit of a counterintuitive view of ethnic humor, or humor that targets minorities. If you look at the gay community in South Africa, for instance, and it's fashionable to joke about Morphees and not Daniel, and we've got these very prominent public figures in the gay community. And that creates a sense of identity and a sense of, hey, this is a community, we might not like them, we might feel threatened by them, but we actually need to pay attention to them. If you compare that to, for example, you might want to call it a lesbian community, there are no really prominent, well, very few really prominent lesbians in South Africa, and no cohesive sense of identity that mainstream society can look at and go, okay, lesbians, we need to deal with the subject of lesbians. And I think unless mainstream society can get a handle on what a community is about, it can't begin to integrate it. It can't pay attention. It can't say, you're worth mocking, you're worth making jokes about, because one day the jokes are going to get tired and I'm actually going to integrate you into the wider sense of self. We've seen that happen with communities in the US, for example. There was once a time when making Polish jokes was very fashionable, when making Irish jokes was very fashionable. That's very rare now, because those communities are so part of the fabric of American society, it's just not funny anymore. But I think that making jokes about things is a way to acknowledge their importance to us. And the fact that so many jokes are made about Julius is a sign that Julius matters a hell of a lot. And in many respects, Julius, for the past 4 years, and the last book I published was in 2010, and he had his own chapter in that book and the previous one. He has defined the South African narrative arc for several years now. And from that point of view, yeah, he is going to be a winner come election day.
Julius represents actually probably, I reckon, sort of 60-70% of whatever is the South African male, right, in South Africa. Because that tells us something about how it is that we write things. The fact that Julius became this parody, when he is so pervasive, if you look around, Julius represents the majority of what you would call a South African male. Do you think that the Julius jokes have worked?
Have they worked?
Yeah.
I think some of them have worked.
Yeah.
I think in a way, Julius has actually, interestingly enough, has toned some of his rhetoric down, but he's also used it in certain ways to push himself into certain spheres that we hadn't actually, I think I've had this conversation with a lot of people where, as far as Julius is concerned, sometimes I'll be around my white liberal friends, and in South Africa, liberal is an insult. So I'll be around my liberal friends, and then they'll say stuff like, "So what do you think about Julius?" And I get into this space where I want to defend Julius. I'm like, actually, on that point, Julius is right, huh?
Yeah.
I agree with Julius on that point. So yeah, I think in some ways it's got us talking about certain things that we need to talk about, certain things that we were hiding from because we didn't want to be politically incorrect, particularly with, not myself because I'm not quite that, but people like you, like the black middle class, that you are shying away from and now you can talk about.
Okay. All right, we're getting to that point where I am going to be inviting you to be just asking questions about the South African funny bone. What you find funny, what do you think is funny, what do you think is not funny? But then my final question to both of you, and I didn't warn you of this, What jokes do you not find funny?
Dead air.
Dead air.
No. I'm trying to think of a joke now
Yeah.
that I don't find funny. I think it's very contextual. So if
Yeah.
I'm with people I perceive to be conservative, right-wing, and they make jokes about political figures,
Yeah.
I generally don't find it funny because I'm reading it through that particular prism. I'm reading it as an expression of their prejudice. So I'm
Yeah.
not reading the text of the joke, independent of who says it. Whereas I find it, this is a classic white liberal thing, I think. I find it much easier to laugh at political jokes when they're made by my black friends than when they're made by people I feel uncomfortable around at the braai. It's like, oh God, I can't
Yeah.
laugh at this. This is embarrassing. Oh. Check my phone, rush off and tweet and pretend.
Are there
eat the
jokes that
potatoes
you
with
are there
salad.
jokes that happen that you think to yourself, this joke would not be made had certain people been
Being
here?
around.
Rape
been
jokes?
around, yeah.
Actually, let's talk about rape jokes
Rape
because
jokes,
that was
yeah.
a big thing last year
Yeah.
with FHM and the twerking and yeah, it's fashionable to laugh at rape jokes in certain circles, and in fact, it's never not been fashionable to laugh at rape jokes. But I think there's an awareness now that saying jokes like that actually perpetuates rape culture, and therefore, I would find it very difficult to laugh at that unless something was incredibly subversive, or the person who said it was somebody I had a lot of respect for. And again, humor is so contextual; it's as much about who says the joke as the joke itself. But yeah, jokes about, I find it difficult to laugh at jokes which reinforce disparate power relations. So if it's a joke about power, exerting power over somebody who's weak, I don't like laughing at that. I find it replays inequality, it recreates inequality. I find humor much more interesting when it messes with existing power relations, and it throws things off a little. That's
The
humor
weak
that's
can laugh at
really-
the strong, but the strong cannot really be laughing at the weak necessarily. Yeah?
Well, they can, but it's
I'm
kind of
just,
not as, it's
yeah.
not that funny. It's
Yeah.
like, oh.
Zooks?
Yeah, I suppose rape jokes, homophobic jokes, and that joke about Oscar Pistorius getting socks for his Valentine's Day and, stuff like that.
But why not? No, but we need to hear it now, because now all of us are now curious. I mean, what?
Yeah, the river joke about Oscar did whatever allegedly shot River and stuff and everything because he had taken her for dinner and stuff and everything, and then for Valentine's she gave him a pair of socks. That wasn't funny.
Too soon.
That was
Too soon, eh?
Yeah,
It's right in the middle of the whole
in
thing.
the whole-
It's
it's
just,
not
no,
right.
No, if
it
you
doesn't.
tweeted that, there would be Twitter outrage,
I
and
know,
there would
exactly.
be a Twitter pylon.
Exactly. So
and
that was just wrong.
No, precisely. All right.
Why are you
Just-
all laughing?
But why is everybody's laughter so stifled? And that's the whole thing, because everyone's laughing, but the thing about it is no one's laughing out loud. But listen, can we take questions from
The audience?
the floor?
Okay, when do I read?
Okay?
When do I read?
Yeah,
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, sorry, before your questions, eh?
My apologies. Zukiswa wants to read from Made in SA, and it is her book about stories coming out of, what is the politically correct? Domestic help.
workers.
Domestic workers in South Africa, yes.
And I'm only reading this bit because I'm in Durban, hey? The liberal middle class Indian madam. The liberal middle class Indian madam is Sophia, or one of her sisters. She's a doctor, a banker, a pharmacist, a lawyer, or an academic. If she's a doctor or a pharmacist, she owns a travel clinic. She does not have black friends. That's because she doesn't need to have black friends. She is black. When she's with her friends, they raise their eyebrows at these liberal whites and talk about the neo-colonization of Africa. She grew up thinking she was Indian back in Durban, but in her second year of university, she went for a holiday to Delhi and realized that she's probably South African. Now she cheers for Proteas when they're playing against India or Pakistan, even when Hashim Amla is not playing. While her family does not quite have the struggle credentials of the Mirs, the Sheikhs, the Pahads, or Big Mac, they all know her daddy. She grew up calling them uncles and aunts, and when she bumps into them at a party, they'll say, "How lovely you have grown, Sophia. Mo, you remember Anil's young daughter, Anil, who was the first Indian to own a shop selling bunny chow on North Beach? Yeah. The best bunny chow in all of Durban, I tell you. Sophia, say hello to your father and tell him I miss his bunny chow." She's at home in the neighborhood largely populated by the middle-class white madams or the middle-class black madams. She really likes Midrand, though, and it is out of town and a nice drive in her X5. She has fantastic single friends among her fellow black middle class, but she's conservative enough to be married. She believes in having it all. Her husband is a quantity surveyor, an actuarial scientist, a lawyer, a banker, a real catch. He also drives a BMW. They considered personalizing them, but decided it would be too ghetto. A word that she and her friends use often. She did not find you at an employment agency. Neither did you go knocking on her door to get a job. You have known each other since you were children. Your mother used to work at her parents' shop, and you were friends since childhood. If the word friend can be used loosely. Okay, you were friends, but suddenly closer when you were children, less so when you became teenagers, because then the differences became blatant. She was your mother's boss daughter, and even though you were invited by a kind and gentle mother to their home once or twice, you never quite felt comfortable as you did not have the right clothes. And it did not feel quite like friendship in retrospect, as you had been getting her hand-me-downs. You got pregnant at 17. Your mother asked her father to give you a job in the shop. And when Sophia finally got married and had children, her mother suggested to you that you may want to come to Johannesburg to help out with her children. You are her friend and your family to us. There's no one who will trust more with our grandchildren. Please, Faith, you go and help your sister. You do not have a choice. You need the money. And you already know Sophia. It really is somewhat like family. You go, and Sophia welcomes you. Your cottage is more comfortable than most. There's a television, a fridge, a two-plate stove. One of those with the microwaves at the bottom. The pay is generous, as are the hours. Sophia is keen to make you feel that you are her friend, first and foremost. She asks you whether you want anything and will come to your cottage with a bottle of wine or some ciders. Yes, she's a practicing Muslim, sometimes. And, like a few practicing African Muslims, she too stops drinking during Ramadan. She comes to you so you can chat and gossip about old friends, old times, or just something that happened to her when she needed to speak to someone she can trust. She knows that you will not judge her. This is the type of relationship you have always had. And yet you'll also give her your honest opinion on things. It's a gift for her to have you. Sophia is always keen to look perfect in front of her friends, and she's the one who listens to all their problems, but can never quite come close to sharing hers, as she may look imperfect. She doesn't mind appearing imperfect to you, though. Her husband doesn't quite know how to treat you. He's unsure whether you're a servile friend or a friendly servant. This becomes quite clear and uncomfortable when they have friends visiting. Faith is like family to us, he will say, trying to delete his bourgeois leanings. She and Sophia grew up together. We're family, aren't we, Faith? He asks, turning to you. And she'll say, Faith, don't worry about washing up. I'll put the plates in the dishwasher when we finish dinner. You can go ahead and rest. I don't want you to be responsible for, I would not want to be responsible for you missing generations.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just trying to figure out where the mic is and if there's any
There it
comment.
is.
Yeah.
Hi. I must say this is very interesting. Once again, I keep coming back to these Time of the Writers. This must be about my 10th now. I've got a question just about political correctness in humor, and especially in South Africa now. You know, talking earlier about taboos, what's taboo? You know, things like the taboo of, for example, me saying kafa, you know. Is this something that maybe now South Africans should be coming to grips with, you know, and learning to deal with and learning to laugh at, you know?
White girl.
No,
Sorry, to the cafe in the middle, please.
I mean, for instance, was he allowed to actually just use the word kafana? Him?
Of course he is, but you can also go
Yeah.
and beat him up for using it if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't think we've reached a point where, I mean, I heard an audible gasp when you said that word. So clearly we haven't reached a point where we can talk about it. It's not like, and even the word nigger, which we hear on radio all the time, and that's N-I-G-G-A as opposed to the original word.
Yeah.
That is not a word that you can say if you are not black. And it's like, I can make blonde jokes, and because I'm blonde, I'm genuinely blonde, but we're still not in a situation where you can necessarily make jokes about an ethnicity other than your own. And I'm finding more and more that there are certain areas, and this is why I brought up the subject of rape jokes, where particularly in social media last year, we saw with the FHM situation, there is an increasing sense that such things are completely forbidden. So there is, it's actually harder to joke about certain things. And there's a very strong feeling growing that joking about things like that is counterproductive. It should be stopped. And I don't know, are you on Twitter? Have you ever offended the Twitter feminists?
No, I play it safe. I stay off Twitter.
Okay. Well, if you go onto Twitter and make a joke about rape, and see what happens, and you will realize that there are certain things that you may not joke about in public.
Yeah.
Certainly not in what is, because social media is now defining the public sphere. Everybody can see your tweet, everybody can retweet your tweet. So you can say those jokes around the braai, and nobody's going to police you. But in a public sphere, there's a very clear sense of what we may joke about and what we may not. And rape jokes are definitely one of them. So I think we are becoming less tolerant of certain types of humor.
Isn't there?
If you're a South African president, you can't make jokes about national roads in Malawi. That's not funny.
Yeah, it's better not to joke at all if you're the president.
Because there is a difference, right? Because I was quite curious to find out what you thought.
Yeah.
Zukiswa. Because I said the word kefa, I wasn't aware of any gasp when
No.
I said it, right? Because you made that point. Is that there's a distinction about who can make certain jokes,
Yeah.
right? But is that double standards? I mean, because I think that's what he's asking, yeah?
I think it's, I also want to touch on what he has just said. I think it's very much important. Recently, I wrote something on my Facebook blog saying that I'm going to a picnic, you know, and it was a real picnic. A friend of mine from the US told me that that is not politically correct because a picnic, it's a KKK kind of a word, which was all about pick a nigger, to kill, to hang.
Oh dear.
You know, so you pick a nigger to hang, and yet we blacks at this point in time, we like going to, you know, to go and enjoy. It's about going to enjoy somewhere, you know. I just wanted to, you know, what it touched on, that are we not censoring ourselves sometimes, you know, in this trying to be politically correct, for instance. I mean, picnic is a nice word, for instance. I mean, it has been used for quite some time, but people now are telling us, now, look, you are perpetrating the stereotypes of the Ku Klux Klan killing all the black
I think
niggas,
context matters, hey?
Yeah.
I think context matters. I went to a braai, but because it was in England, it was a barbecue. I went to a barbecue with a friend of mine who is a white British and had a child with a black South African. And they had this young child, and it was in Southampton, and they'd never actually encountered. So we went to this braai, and it was white South Africans, and they'd never encountered, they'd never seen the father of the child, the South African black guy. And so we're all hanging out, and then the father was coming from Northampton, and they sent him a message, with the, coordinates for him to come through. And he came through, and the young kid who was biracial went running and said, "Daddy, daddy, daddy, daddy," And the little white South African kid, who obviously didn't grow up in South Africa, said, "Oh, Michael, you didn't tell me your daddy was a kafir." Now, this was very problematic because of the context of it, So I always like to think regarding jokes and free speech. I often like to quote, who's that constitutionally speaking guy?
Pierre de Vos.
Yes, Pierre de Vos. I often like to quote Pierre de Vos on this, where he says, everyone has a right to put out their fist, but the right to you putting out your fist ends where my nose begins, So if it offends me, then it's not right. It's not an okay joke.
I do have to question that, because offense is a moving target, and some people are offended by everything. Some people are professionally offended.
Well, there is that.
So I do think we need some kind of, like, the K word, and I won't say the K word out loud because I just can't.
No, you actually can't. Yeah,
no,
No, you can't. You're not allowed.
No, because speaking about fists, my fist is right here, so I'm just saying.
So I think we are in agreement that is a very offensive word, depending on who uses it. And that is not something that's really open for debate. And there are certain types of jokes. If you joke about rape, for example, because we have this incredibly high rate of gender-based violence, and there's the sense that jokes support rape culture, that is partly why there's this resistance to it. So I'm in two minds about this whole argument about political correctness, because political correctness can be used as an excuse to make jokes about things that you actually possibly shouldn't. And yeah, I mean, I could be here for hours, and we're supposed to close at 10. It is an incredibly difficult subject, probably the most difficult one we've debated this week, is where does the nose begin and the fist end?
I think we're having this conversation earlier on today with Shai and Laurie and Kebetli and a couple of other people. And it was regarding the fact that generally, as a South African woman, when you're walking and you meet you see a group of men on the street, you always feel that you have to walk to the other side because they're going to say, sisi ngayama phone number and stuff. And we're talking about that. And this guy, one of the guys was saying, oh no, he's just joking, he's trying to flatter you and whatever. But if I feel violated, if I don't feel comfortable, then it's not funny. If you would be offended if somebody said the same thing to your mom, to your sister, to your daughter, or whatever, then don't do it to me or any other woman, And that's the same thing with race as well.
Do we have another question that's been acknowledged with a mic?
Here's the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there's a certain myth that humor is universally appealing without one looking at the discourse of power. For instance, hegemonic groups in society tend to define even what makes us laugh and what makes us not, laugh. So within this idea that humor is a free for all, there's also a possibility that we actually perpetuate. Even if, for instance, we say we want to be politically incorrect, there's something also that potentially also doing that might be a violation, as Zuki was talking about. In a society that is patriarchal, we tend to have a lot of jokes that demean women, and a lot of us tend to think this is okay because we're not trying to be PC, but we are saying things that we want to say. So power should always be one of the things that we're constantly reviewing when we're, for instance, the dominance of Zapiro in the landscape of cartoons in this country is also about the hegemony of certain forces in the South African media and how it wants that agenda to be set by one person, Zapiro, and not somebody else. Thank you.
I think there's a question over there. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're good. Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, okay. I'm Ndumiso, I'm a student here. I'm not making a comment or anything. Just a recommendation for the gentleman from the UK there, you're South Africa, you're just based in the UK at the moment, okay. Just a recommendation for you. I'd like you to go to Sanda Panda's blog, Sanda Writes, and just read her. She writes something about the reclamation of words, that there are just some words that you can't reclaim, because you're saying, as South Africans, when is the time coming where we can come to grips with the word kafa? And so she writes about there are just some words that you can't reclaim. Bitch, kafa, nigga. There's just some things that I don't know, you just can't dignify. So I just really like you to just go on that blog and just read that specific article. That's it.
Right, we've got another question over there.
Thank you. I just want to check, to what extent should humor be just part of a funny aesthetic without constituting any socio-political critique? I think my colleague over there has raised it. So I just want to check, should humor just become kind of a funny aesthetic unrelated to power relations, or should it constitute a form of a socio-political critique to the prevailing social forces?
What?
I think one of the, I think that's the funniest thing I've heard today. No, but really, because I think anyone walking in here right now who wasn't part of the discussion we had, context, is like coming in here, it's like these people are talking about jokes, and then they hear a question, it's funny. Like, but you have an answer. No, really, no.
Can I respond to that? And I think you're a fantastic example of how we can. Why does it have to be a black or white? And this is in the very general, not the literal skin tone sense. But why does it have to be either or? Why can't humor be all of that? Why can't we laugh at the fact that the robots were out, or that we stubbed our toe, or so we can laugh at stuff that is part of the general human condition.
Or there was that big pothole in Sandton.
Yeah, we can laugh at stuff as South Africans that only other South Africans will know about. We can use humor as social political critique. We can use it for all of that. It doesn't have to be either or. Humor is everywhere. It's part of who we are. It's part of everyday life.
But I also think he does have a very good point. I mean, because, the question that Sandile brings up about the universally, how universal is humor. Did you think it was funny that he was speaking so seriously about humor? Funny, because I was sitting here and I thought it's funny that we should speak about humor in these terms.
No, but here's the thing, though, Ndumiso. So you're assuming that he was speaking seriously. Maybe he was being humorous.
Okay, I think
I got the mic.
Yeah? Yeah, you've got the mic. Sorry.
The point you made, Sarah, about the some of the things that you wouldn't find humorous, like laughing at somebody's pain, got me thinking, because I think that was quite a good point. But then as we went on with the kinds of political correctness that I think we're all censoring ourselves about, that makes me even more uncomfortable. And I was thinking about the passage that Shibunda, I hope I'm saying her name right, read about the a father driving over this animal that she loved again and again, and her way of dealing with it was to make this joke about, why don't you drive over its head next time? So should one not be able to describe those kind of things, because that's really describing serious pain in a humorous way? So, you know, my feeling, and it's probably not a funny one, is that one has to just allow any kind of expression, race, hate, anything. I think you just have to allow those things. They may not be particularly funny.
I'd like to answer that. You know, I think there's a certain sensitivity. Like when I did Made in SA, it's nonfiction. It's nonfiction humor, but it's nonfiction. And there were certain sensitivities that I had to maneuver, whereas when I do my novels, I just let it all out. And Chibundu's book is a novel, and you can actually like let certain things out without offending anybody, because it's the voices of your characters, and perhaps that's the difference between nonfiction and fiction, and that's probably the reason why quite a few writers who have been in this festival and other festivals prior find fiction very liberating, because you can say the type of things that are politically incorrect, that are crazy, that whatever, through the voices of your characters without offending. So as far as you're concerned, it's not Zukiswa who's saying it, it's Mfundo who's saying it, you know?
Well, it is okay to offend people. Actually, that is part of what it means to live in a democracy where, for the most part, freedom of speech is guaranteed. And there are degrees at which you can no longer offend. But there is this underlying sense in this discussion that if you offend, oh my God, I offended somebody. Actually, it's okay to offend. But then if you are going to offend people, be accountable for the fact that you offended them. And there are degrees of offense. There's really hectic offensiveness, and there's offensiveness where you look at somebody and go, geez,
really?
Yeah. I'm sure Tani's write to the Sunday Times every week complaining about how much you offended them. I'm sure they do. Do they?
You had a BCCA complaint, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
Way back.
People get offended by anything that I could be writing about my socks, and people will still be offended.
Yeah.
Because there are people who wake up in the morning, and the first question that they ask themselves is, what can I find today that will offend me? And then they find it in whatever it is that you do.
But you can't talk about stinking socks, though. That's offensive.
Well, no, you can't talk about Oscar's stinking socks. That's the main thing.
Oh, all right. Just in closing, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. But I'm pretty certain that in 30 seconds, both of you can kind of sum up, number one, what it is that you had prepared to talk about on this panel. But number two, just based on what everyone has said, in 30 seconds, say what it is that summing up what your position, assuming you had one to begin with, what it was.
Okay, we're starting with me.
Yes.
Okay. Humor is at its best and at its funniest when it questions power instead of reinforcing it. It is okay to offend, but I do believe, in general, it is far better to mock ideas than it is to mock real lived human pain.
Zooks?
I got it in 15.
Okay, your applause already took 10 seconds. Yeah, Zooks?
The books outside, the signatures are for free. Buy them.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zukiswa, Wanner, Sarah Britten, talking about a very difficult subject, humor.